So how'd your teams go? Good conversation? Get somewhere?
Yeah.
Any thoughts for next week and how we wrap this up?
Are we going to wrap it up?
I wanted to make one comment about tonight. I liked hearing from the 4 groups. I think
Mhm.
having a deeper dive was a good idea. So appreciate you guys suggesting that. And I think that was good to create
Yeah.
the space
I
to
like
hear
it.
from the 4 different groups. So I appreciate that. And next week, I think I would like to see maybe something similar where we spend time in our small groups for a while, looking at actions that we can each take, and then come back with some kind of reflection or sharing on our time together, because this has been what, eight sessions totally that we've had.
Mhm. In another session that I was leading a little part of it, I thought that we used well some time where we reflected on our own in quiet. And I think we did that time 5 minutes. And I think you could do 10 minutes of reflection in your own journal. And you could be writing down what's the edge for you of where you want to be moving, where you need to be moving, and you could come up with maybe some kind of a phrase or a symbol that would hold that.
I like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Other thoughts?
Going along with actions we can each take might be some conversation about actions we might take as a group, and or even also combined with other groups that have been studying this same material with Dwayne Elgin. And so so the question is more how, in addition to individual steps we might take at our very local levels, how might we as a group begin to see ourselves as a contributing group to something larger with other similar groups? How might we tie in or connect or move forward in a way that connects us with other similar groups?
So we might think about whether we want to, one option is to do a second breakout based on these folk, that is, people say, I'd like to work on X, and other people can join them in an actual breakout. It makes your breakouts, either they have to be able to choose their own, or you have a little more complex time assigning them. Another option is people type the topic in the chat, and then others sign on to that topic in the chat. But when they actually talk about it is later. They don't have to talk about it in the session. We have a dialogue group that's been meeting for 6 weeks, and this is one of the ways we close the 6 weeks, is to have people be able to suggest topics that they want to continue to explore. And
Okay.
then individuals can sign in, but they don't have to. If we have time, we break them and let them break into those teams for 5 minutes, just sort of basically to do logistics kind of conversation. Anyway, it's just a thought. I'm complete.
If next week is the last session, do we want to spend time on sharing our insights in terms of how the study method can be used again with other groups? In other words, as we went through this study, we've experienced it, and we may have some ideas as to where it works, how it can be improved. Do we want to get that kind of feedback as well? just asking.
I like that.
Yeah, it's worth it, I think.
I think, Jim, I noticed you said something about, well, Colleen had originally said, asked if we wanted to do like a survey of all the group members. And you had raised that question I saw today in an email. So just to, Dharma, with your question, do you think a survey would fill some of that? Or do you think it needs to be some joint discussion where we come up with a consensus of view on that?
Good
It
question.
was more of, not so much of a consensus, but more of harvesting whatever experiences we've had, stepping back from the issue of what the book says, but looking at it in terms of how the journey has been. In case, I'm sure we want to do this study with other groups. So how can our experiences benefit that kind of thing? Yeah.
I find that the list in that last chapter 14 is a pretty good list from the standpoint of asking questions, both not only about ourselves, but about people that we come in contact with. For example, you might look at the people that you come in contact with and say to yourself, who needs to answer the question about how they can be more deeply informed? Who needs to choose simplicity? Who needs to discuss protection and restoring nature? And both from a standpoint of how can we do it and how can we help other people that we come in contact with. Each of those areas that he lists there, I think there's 10 areas.
11.
Hmm?
There's 11. There's
11,
one on the
okay.
next page.
Yeah, yeah.
What about,
I like that idea, David.
Yeah.
Just thinking about combining that with Nancy's suggestion of doing a journaling exercise. If there was some journaling around those, people have look at those 11 areas and then maybe journal on some of those questions of where do you want to put your energy and how might you be able to move this forward, or where do you see a need for that, something of that nature.
okay,
I don't know how, I'm sort of an interloper maybe at this point, but one of the things that has struck me is this idea of electronic town meetings. And that combined with number 2, cultivate your true gifts, sort of made me think that a light went on. I don't know how we would pursue that kind of, whether that's at what point, how that would be considered. But I feel that in terms of the future, that is something, a place where we have gifts, and how do we be responsible about that? I'm complete.
thank you all. Anything else?
Who's got the bird?
I have 3 birds.
Ah,
Oh, wow.
2
Mine are
birds that live here and a neighbor bird whose family's gone on vacation. Sorry
That's
about
lovely.
that.
Bird sitter.
is there anybody who's interested in working with David and I to try and come up with a plan for next week? I mean, I'll rope all of you in, but I was just,
I really don't have time, but I did put in the debrief piece that we're doing for this dialogue group we're working with, just as an example of a way that you can send something to people earlier. They can begin their debrief as a journaling piece. And then when they come into the session, you can have some piece of conversation, but then they can also continue to work later. Anyway, there are 3 options for different ways that we've thought about. One's a focused conversation, one is a sort of a game, and the others, anyway, the 3 different,
It's in
we're
the
going to
chat.
use, it's in the chat. We're going to use the focused conversation version. But the other 2 were just scenarios that we came up with as possible ways to do it. So we're going to send it out to people. We sent it out to people yesterday, and then tomorrow night we're going to meet with them, and they will have had a chance to start their own journal, and then we'll do a corporate piece at the end of the session, and then they'll have time to finish work on it and send it in later. I'm complete.
Larry, there's some really old people on this call who maybe get confused about downloading chats and stuff like that. Could you send that to me as an email attachment?
I certainly can. I can certainly do that.
All right,
My computer is ambidextrous.
thank you.
This was great. I just clicked on it.
Yeah,
I just clicked on it and it popped up. Try it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got it
tried
like
that
this.
and
Click
I-
on it and it
That's
just
very
gave
cool.
it to me.
I tried that and
Immediately.
it said something I didn't understand.
Yeah, that's because it's in Chinese. No, it's not. It's in English. Anyway, Jim, I am sending it to you as we speak.
Thank you. And,
Jim, in answer to your question, if, I think you and David have done a wonderful job of putting together this material up to this point. But if I can be of any assistance, I could help after Wednesday. I can't do anything before Wednesday, but Thursday or later, would be willing to help. If there's any help I can do, provide.
thank you.
I don't mind.
I could
Know what
do
Louis
some-
Pierce was doing with his.
Louis,
fingers
did you
by
wanna
his
add
feet, but
something,
he's
or-
on mute.
Hey, Louis.
I'm out of town in a rural clinic and I'm saying goodnight to my dear wife, but
Oh,
she isn't paying,
Oh.
she isn't paying any attention to me.
sorry.
Good night,
We should
everybody
give you a
else. Good night.
breakout room.
Well, I'm
You're in the
I'm glad
deep
we gave
weeds, it
you-
looks like.
Great job.
All
Where
right.
glad we
you?
gave, glad we gave the 2 of you a chance to connect.
They can
Hey,
reply-
Larry, may
Yes.
I ask you a question? I read something today that there was a terrible crane train crash in Taiwan. What
Yes.
can you say about that?
Well, is there a new one, or is this the one from a couple
No.
months ago?
Oh, well, I just heard it today.
Oh, well, I haven't looked at the news today, but because this was my first session. But we did have a terrible accident 2 months ago, and it has been, the tracks have all been repaired and everything, but there's a whole
wow.
assessment
Okay.
going on to the across the train system of Taiwan relative to I mean, this is, what do you call it? This is part of this whole thing, same as the Florida falling down thing.
Yeah,
How Taiwan's rail traditionally is very super duper at assessment and tracking and all this kind of stuff. So this really freaked them out, because this is literally not supposed to happen, and they're supposed to have backups on backups
Yeah.
and stuff. But it
Yeah.
was it was both human error and a structural issue. The human error was somebody parked their truck on a hill above a tunnel.
Yeah.
Waited and then gravity waited for the last train to go through, and then the truck fell, and then the next train.
That's
So
what I
part
read
of it
about
was
today.
just the way life is you
Uh,
can't plan everything, but
Okay,
there were some other issues.
All right. I'm
Okay.
going now.
Yeah,
Thank you.
there's an
all very
article
much.
about it today.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, there may have been
Yeah.
another
Yeah,
one,
that's-
but there,
yeah.
it's
No,
In the New
possible.
York Times.
Same